since we last spoke to Max Papis. We figured you needed a bit of time to catch up on the last 13 episodes, and Guy and I have got back on with the racing in our own various ways. So hopefully, like all of you, things are starting to get a bit back to normal and things are getting busy again. Guy, we've got to touch on it, I'm sorry, after such a successful historic touring car debut, your trip to Brands Hatch didn't exactly go to plan a couple of weekends ago, but you have got a pretty decent racing driver excuse, right?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up, Paul.
It's all right.
It was all going so well. It was actually leading the race and pulling out a nice gap. And I was really enjoying it. And then I think on about lap 3, lap 4, coming up to Druids, basically came to brake for the corner and throttle stuck wide open and straight into the sidewall. So it's quite a big impact. It was later found out, I think it was a stone got caught in the carburetor. And jammed the throttle open. So it was quite a big impact. So not quite the result I was looking for. But
at least in the video, you can hear the throttle stuck open. So anyone who's perhaps doubting the book of excuses and which page you'd flick to, it's right.
I'm glad that somebody saw it on video as well. Yeah, it's nice to have it on video. So yeah.
Are we any closer to WEC commitments getting back underway then, Guy?
Yeah. So we're back at. We're going to do Le Mans. So with our car, we're going to miss Spa, which is the next round. There's 6 hours of Spa, but we're going to focus all our efforts on the 24 hours. So we've got a test planned at the end of August, a 2-day test planned at the end of August. So we're just busy sort of preparing for that. Obviously, we're just trying to understand. Chris, my co-driver, is obviously from the US. So we just need to try and figure out how we get him over here safely and with all the sort of quarantine rules and stuff. So we're just working through that at the minute, but hopefully that will all go ahead as planned and prepare ourselves ready for the race. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Excellent. Now, if you're listening to this on iTunes or Google or Spotify or wherever you download your podcasts, don't forget we also upload the shows to our YouTube channel. You've got 13 to work your way through, and Spinning Wheels is also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So if you follow us on any of those social media platforms, you'll know exactly who we've lined up for you next. And you'll also know there's a bit of divided opinion over a particular car he raced. But there's no divided opinion when you talk about his career. Single-seaters to sports cars is a familiar theme, of course, on this podcast. And when you throw factory drives for Aston Martin and Bentley in, Le Mans, Sebring, his role as director of the BRDC Superstars program, you start to see what an impact Andy Meyrick has had on the sport. And now, with the world getting back to normal and going racing again, there's every possibility we'll see him on track very soon. But for now, he's here. Welcome to Spinning Wheels, Andy.
Well, thanks very much. No, good. Thanks very much for having me. And it's just good to see that little Smithy's okay. I know he's getting older. Those bones ain't getting any stronger. So
it wasn't the first question you asked, though, was it? It wasn't how are you?
I take plenty of vitamins, Andy, so I'm all right. It's all good.
Well, luckily, you've still got a bit of puppy fat left over from lockdown to protect you, so you're okay.
You should show us the puppy fat, Guy. We had the guns out a minute ago.
I don't want to get the guns out. I don't want to get the guns out now. I don't want to put to shame.
It's like Lewis Hamilton in lockdown, this guy.
I know, exactly, yeah. Well, Andy loves posting sort of semi-naked selfies of himself training. Or,
Well, to be honest, usually the fully naked ones are just left for sending to you, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah,
I've had a few of those as well. So after being teammates for a couple of years, it's fair to say I've seen pretty much most of Andy Meyrick. It's fair to say. So,
an unusual start to episode 14, which is fitting because you had a bit of an unusual start to your career as well, Andy. You didn't go the normal karting route everyone else went, did you? Yeah,
no, I started really very, very late in motorsport. I was 19, 20, not the year. I was 19.
So that's a long time ago.
Yeah, so I was about 19 or 20, I can't remember now, and I'd always been interested in motorsport, but when I got into it, if I'm perfectly honest with you, had no intentions of making it into a professional career.
Sorry to interrupt. Why don't we just tell them a little bit about your career before you sort of got into motor racing?
Well, if you've got to mention it, Guy, I don't know how to talk about it. No, so I played junior professional football from the age of 8. I was at Bolton Wanderers for a very long time. And then at 16 they kept me on, so I signed YTS at that age, which is when they start. You sign your first proper professional contract, and obviously at 16, that's when they probably get rid of a lot of footballers because. The sort of recruitment process for football is pre-16 is let's just cast our net as wide as possible, and hope that we catch some good ones. And obviously at that age of people's development, everybody is going through different growth spurts, different stages of their own development. So you don't always necessarily get the effective footballers aren't necessarily the most talented ones, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer for people to shine. But I was freakishly big at the age of sort of 9, 10, 12. I mean, I haven't grown since, obviously, but I was quite early, an early developer, and my football sort of took precedent, really. So it stopped me from being involved in any motorsport, although I'd always wanted to, and I'd always been really, really interested in it. And
if you're joining us just now, you're right, we have changed the podcast from spinning wheels to spinning balls. Sorry, carry on. And
I mean, I'd grown up around seeing pictures of my father. My father actually raced, not professionally, but for as a hobby, and stopped the year I was born. He was actually, at the time, he was teammates with Bertrand Farby, who sadly was killed in a testing crash, which I think had quite a big impact on my dad. And my dad was sort of starting his business at the time, and he thought, 2 young kids, I don't want to be doing this anymore. So he stopped the year that I was born. But I think growing up around motorsport, I was aware of it, really, really interested in it. But obviously, I did nothing but play football from the age of 8, which definitely showed in my GCSE results. So I didn't actually get involved in motorsport till finished my A levels. Was going to university, and I actually took a year out between that, and I just thought, well, look, I want to kart for a year or so, or I want to do some sort of entry level Formula Ford, and I ended up doing Formula Ford for a year, and it all sort of snowballed from there, really. Very unusual entry into the sport, but I think having been through a career at a very, very high level, and actually when you see junior professional athletes in other sports, you really realise how, in some respects, our junior professional athletes are really underdeveloped in motorsport. We put loads of resource into cars and technical stuff, but sometimes the development of the drivers wasn't great. So I think there was a lot of transferable skills from what I'd learned in football that I could apply in motorsport, that meant that when I got in a car, my rate of development was really, really high. So within, I think, 3 seasons, I was doing, from nothing, I was doing British Formula 3 and doing okay at it. So that was my sort of entry into the sport. So slightly different for most people who sort of follow the karting and
were you funding that yourself then, if you went straight to, because I know it's not as expensive as other categories, but it is still a big budget enterprise. Were you funding that yourself, or did you get
sponsored? Yeah, absolutely. So the first year of racing, I mean, it wasn't done fancy, sort of going to a team or anything like that. We just had my dad had a trailer, I bought a car, I had some money left over I've been very lucky that I've been paid to play football. But we weren't talking huge amounts of money for Formula Ford. So I funded the first year, and at the end of it, had nothing left to go with, and sort of came to an arrangement between, my father helped me out a bit, we had sponsors, we had people that helped me, and managed to get through to a stage fairly quickly, as I say, to get to British Formula 3. And it wasn't as expensive, obviously forget inflation and all that sort of stuff. The actual cost of going racing, when obviously Guy was doing Formula 3 before me, but similar sort of thing, that there wasn't as many fixed costs of big trucks, of physios, of managers, of all the should we say, dare I say, hangers on, and all those extras that you needed to do Formula 3. And it was a lot more accessible to more privateer stuff. So it wasn't as expensive, but yeah, for those first few years, definitely. I mean, I had to initially fund it myself, then rely on support from family and sponsors. And I think that, again, making that change from single seaters into sports cars early in my career was the only option, because otherwise I was barking at the wrong tree, thinking I was going to be a Formula 1 driver, with how late I was coming into the sport, but also not knowing anybody in terms of connections within the sport as well.
At what point did you sort of did it sort of be go from being kind of a hobby to actually I might actually make a career out of this?
Do you know what? I don't. I would say I remember going. So it's funny. I remember doing Formula Ford, and I remember one of our mechanics. I remember Milo, the Irish guy. I think you worked with Milo. So Milo used to work on my Formula Ford, and he was working for, actually, ironically, JLR, which obviously Richard Dean, who now I'm driving for at United Autosport. And Milo invited me to Alton Park and said, look, come and watch these Formula Renault cars go around. And they were all the sort of 16, 17, 18-year-old drivers. So they were younger than I was at the time. And I went and watched these essentially kids racing around Alton Park, or testing at Alton Park in Formula Renault. And they all had trucks and, like really fancy, nice overalls. And it just looked like a different world to what I was used to. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, if I ever just get to test one of those cars, that will be my career fulfilled. And then very quickly I did Formula Renault, did Formula 3, and it just sort of snowballed. So I would say probably at the end of the Formula 3 season, where I started to get interest from big teams, manufacturers, big sports car teams, because I'd had some success. I think that's when I started to really. And at the same time, I was still doing I did an economics degree at university, and I suppose that was a time where I thought, wow, I actually think I could make this dream essentially might become a reality. And I think that again that helped me, because I kept up with my education. It made it really, really hard in terms of I didn't have much spare time, but it also meant that I did have a backup, and I was very realistic about the chances of becoming a professional sportsman, and a racing driver is very difficult. So yeah, probably around Formula 3 time, I would say. And it
there's a business case stacked up as well then, if you're an economics graduate.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? Actually, I remembered. Somebody went on to Dragon's Den a few years ago and tried to sell the case of support me, and I'll be a professional racing driver, and I'll give you a certain percentage of my. And you just wouldn't do it, would you? Because there's so many uncertainties. You can't get into the sport looking for a return. There's a few that do, and Guy, myself, and lots of other drivers have made it work. But for the 1 or 2 or 10 of us that there's hundreds and thousands that haven't. And I think because again, it's not like you're a professional basketball player, or you're a professional footballer, where you can earn that money, where you're going to get massive returns on it. So I made it work. Guy made it work, but it's as an investment point of view, I think as that young guy did in Formula Ford when he went to the Dragon's Den, I think Duncan Bannatyne left him out of the room, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Andy, because it all nearly came to a stop because you got quite ill, didn't you? Sort of at the end of was it when you were doing Formula 3 you got ill?
Yeah, so that was the Formula 3 season where, at the time it was absolutely horrendous, because that was it. I thought at the time, wow, I might not even drive a racing car again from a medical condition and a licensing point of view, let alone be competitive again. So I was leading the national class in British Formula 3, which was good, but what was probably giving me a lot of credit at the time was I was getting really strong overall results against the international cars in a 3-year-old car with a heavy engine and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't just the results in class, it was the overall stuff that was giving me a lot of, shall we say, momentum in what I was doing. And I was just in a good place in my driving. I was happy in the team. So you felt like, top of the world. And you went from suddenly being, winning races every week. I think we won 7 or 8 of the first 12 races of the season. So suddenly in a coma and for 3 months and fighting for your life. And that brought me back down to a fairly.
What actually happened then?
So I raced at Thruxton. Long story short, I think I'd qualified on pole one of the races, binned it in the second qualifying, so qualified at the back of the race, or the back of the grid. Raced like halfway through the race. Halfway through the race, got this horrendous headache, just unbearable headache. Finished the race, fine, no problem. Tested a few days later, went to Pembrey, and was literally my time and everything was off. I was still had this horrible headache, and really, really struggling. And worked the next day. I think I went down to Snetterton and picked up an engine from my father, because my father had started racing historics again by this stage. So I think I'd gone down to Jeff Richardson and picked up an old, I don't know, whatever it was, a Hart or a BDA or something like that, and was driving back up the road, and my head was just pounded. Ended up in hospital that weekend. And I had a neurological condition, basically, called cerebral vasculitis, which is inflammation of the blood vessels going to my brain. So I had basically an infection of the brain, which was negative, obviously horrendous in one stage, but did prove, ironically, that I did have a brain, which was up until that point in huge question. And yeah, they just got this condition that really accelerated very, very quickly. They put me into an induced coma, and yeah, if I'm honest, I was very, very lucky. I think it was a lot worse for my parents than it was for me, because
you're out of it.
Exactly, and before you went into it and when you came out of it, you had pain to deal with, and I've had quite a few, not things like that, but I've had quite some major setback. That's a major setback. I had a crash at Spa a few years ago where I had another major setback. And if I'm honest with you, I actually, ironically, this sounds very, very strange, but when I've been in hospital for large periods of time, I relish the opportunity. In a weird way, I'm going to sound strange, I actually quite enjoy it, because I see it as an opportunity to rebuild myself and improve myself. Luckily managed to pull through, but then get back in a car within 6 months, and I had to learn to get hand-eye coordination. I had to learn to walk again. Initially, there was some big challenges to overcome, and I think again there was probably an element there of, ironically, this is the way I look at it. I remember having this conversation with Alan McNish years later. At the time, I was just okay. I was quite a quick, fast, up-and-coming driver, but nothing ironic, nothing special. I think at the time I could win if I was in the right car on the right day, in the right team, with the right circumstances. But any idiot can do that, as long as you can turn a steering wheel and press some pedals. That's not that difficult, as long as you've got a modicum of talent. I think having had that process and having had that whole episode, it gave me a real strength of character and a self-belief, where I actually thought, okay, if I do my best and if I really work, and I had the confidence after that event that I'll go toe-to-toe with anyone, no problem. And if they beat me, they're going to have to do really, really. And if they do, no problem. That really have helped me in my life and my career. Yeah. To not have unnecessary arrogance about things, but just an inner confidence to think, yeah, I can achieve something now. So I think that become a professional, the fast kid, ironically.
Cool. So then you kind of moved to sports car racing, because you joined Collis, didn't you, with the Audi R10? So how did that come about? Was that a conscious decision to move to sports car racing at that point? Was it something that you wanted to do, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, probably, like anything, you'd love to have carried on the seat of dream for longer and longer. But I got a test. Neil Brown was doing my engines in Formula 3. So my dad had known Neil Brown from when he'd done his engines when he'd been doing Formula 3. Yeah. So Neil Brown was doing the engines for Audi and DTM at the time. So I managed to get
14 engines as well.
We can have a word with him about them carburetors, mate.
Exactly, please.
So got a test in a DTM car. That went well, and then there was no DTM opportunities, but there was an opportunity in sports cars. And yeah, if I'm honest, it was another lucky or timely that was, because there was no real other options to continue in single seaters that were affordable. We didn't have the backing to go to a GP2 or a World Series by Renault. And yeah, loved it. And also just got into sports cars and straight away. I mean, that first weekend, it was Barcelona ELMS that I did. I mean, looking back, it was just crazy. I just had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I was very lucky that I had some great teammates in the same team. Lorraine Carter-Kane, Michael Crum, Liuzzi had been there. I remember Stefan Johansson turned up for the shootout test, and I learned a lot of those sort of levels of drivers to really help my development and sort of help me turn into the sports car. Yeah, no, really.
Yeah. And then, but really, you kind of you still there?
I'm here.
It's okay. I think I'm just frozen. Sorry. I mean, obviously, it was really kind of 2010 when your learning curve really kind of ramped up, wasn't it? Because you got yourself a proper teammate at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, Chris Dyson, first teammate I've had.
Oh,
And
I think we've lost your bandwidth.
We just lost you there, Andy.
Oh, I've gone again.
There you go.
We're gone.
There you go. Yeah, you're good.
So where did you get
bandwidth?
You heard obviously Chris Dyson. Yeah, obviously we go together in 2010, so I would put you, to be honest, mate. I'd put you about 5th or 6th in the team. So that's I was teammate. It's Chris Dyson, real legend. But
what lives in you again?
What's happening?
Let
me stick. Where have I gone to?
I don't know. I lost you. You just for last.
It keeps saying Andy Meyrick's bandwidth is low.
Right. Well, that's probably brain power. To be honest, it means brain cells are low. Struggling.
Have you not been paying your Wi-Fi bill?
It's the old like Wi-Fi. We're on dial-up here in Manchester. What's it like now? Is it better?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I can see now. Yeah, just you just freezing up a bit. That's fine. That's okay.
We're talking about when Guy and Andy first teamed up together. When Guy said that you had a proper teammate for the first time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Chris Dyson. So he taught me everything. He taught me everything. No. I mean, I have to say, 2010 was a breakthrough year in my career. The second year in sports cars, to get to race at the long, those endurance races in the States was just amazing. Do it for such a mega team in Dyson, but also get to race at Le Mans as well. And yeah, learn some good things and some bad things off Smithy on and off track. It was. Do tell.
You guys have raced together, so this is where I come in, because the enthusiasts listening to this podcast think, what things did you learn? Let's start with the bad ones and we'll move to the good ones.
Well, I remember Smithy telling me about the time that he stuck his balls on Marino's head when he was getting a massage at Dyson in the So, mate, I think that he told me that on the first test day.
Well, that kind of thing happens a lot. I think, when you're on the massage table, it's amazing what happens. It's definitely not a very relaxing place to be with people like Meyrick and what have you around, because you're always expecting the unexpected. And I think as you get older and wiser, you kind of have to just, you learn to expect it. But
what the weird thing was about being teammates with you, Guy, was whenever I'd do anything like that to you, you'd just let me do it. That was the strange thing. You just asked me. In fact, you'd ironically ask me to do it
again. So, is that the good thing or the bad thing about being a teammate?
That's the only thing I remember. No, it was. We had a mega year, to be honest. It was. We had obviously starting with Sebring, getting a podium. It was a difficult Sebring, but we still managed to get a podium. And I think it was just, to race at that level so early into my sports car career with such amazing teammates, and that obviously then led on to the Le Mans opportunity as well. With Oreca. So yeah, that's definitely one of the years.
4th at Le Mans on your first visit. It's pretty cool. To be first non-Audi. It's a pretty good result, isn't it?
Yeah, it was those days where it was in Peugeot. They were like, you just all knew before the start of the race, it was going to be Audi 1, 2, 3, 4, and Peugeot 123 and then Peugeot, or some mix of those top 6. And the race, that LMP1 petrol class that it was called at the time, sort of, it was actually a really, really good class, because you had the Pescarollas, you had the Works Aston Martins, you had the Orecas, you had a lot of the privateers there, and it was almost as hotly contested. It was probably more interesting than the diesels, because there was actually there was more variety within that class, and we had no chance of an overall victory, but nearly actually came really, really close to an overall podium, and probably not by being the quickest. I mean, we just really, and me, Oreca were just marveling as a team, and to this day are probably one of, if not the best team I've driven for, and just incredible to be with, to be honest.
Yeah, they're a really good team, and obviously now running the Rebellion program, you know, and obviously being involved with Toyota as well. So yeah, absolutely, you know, top team. And how do you find sort of racing in America? Because I guess that was your first kind of sort of foray in the States. I mean, is it something that you enjoyed? Was it obviously quite a lot different to Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. And to be honest with you, I was there, and I get very, very fond memories. And even to this day, I will say this to people, that it's really, obviously, every time I go to work, every time I go to test a car, despite what, obviously maybe not at the moment because of COVID, you get on a plane to go and do what you're doing, and you fly to the circuit or to the airport. You go to the circuit in Europe, wherever, in Asia, wherever it is. Every single time I take off on a plane to go to America and to fly to America to test a car, race a car, it's almost one of those pinch me moments that you actually think, wow, somebody's paying me to do this. This is my job. I get to fly to America, get into a racing car and drive around a track and come home. And there's something different I find about racing in the States. I just love it. It feels more relaxed. It's more approachable. And it's odd because you almost have the same teams, not necessarily by name, but the team personnel, the same mechanics, the same drivers. It's almost like a traveling circus when you go to the States, as you would do in Europe. But in Europe, you won't necessarily speak to your competitors. You won't necessarily speak to the other engineers. But there's that openness about racing in the States, probably because you are intense, probably because you all eat at Finesses or Marions or whatever it's called. And it's doing it a disservice by saying it's more relaxed. It's not. It's in some respects actually the racing on track by the rules is sometimes a little bit more intense. With the wave bars and stuff, you've always got a chance of a victory. I just loved it, and I think I really, really thrived in racing in the States in every stage of my career. And I look back at it always is helped by usually after the race. You can't get home that night, so you know that you've got that night and the next day to recover before you have to fly back the next night. So you usually have a good, you either have a good night out celebrating or a good night out sort of commiserating. But yeah, I've always just loved it, and I think it's also the variety of tracks as well.
Yeah,
you know, you go down Los Angeles racing on the streets of Long Beach to America. It's just everything. I love it.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry, I missed that. It's okay. It was cutting out again. I was going to say. So you said how much you look forward to racing the US, and what about being strapped into the giant penis? Is that good fun?
Come on. That's just nasty.
Well,
so if you've followed us on Twitter, you'll see that there's been a bit of conversation about the infamous Delta wing, which I actually quite liked as a kid. I thought it was brilliant. It just looked bizarre, but Guy has a very phallic interpretation.
Well, it is. I mean, I just wanted to paint it pink and put some pubes on it. You know, I mean, it was just.
Well, you wanted to put it somewhere, didn't you? Let's be honest with you.
We're right back to that massage table again.
Exactly.
But it was one of those things. It was one of those cars that it just looked so strange.
Crap.
Well, it was interesting because when you followed it on the circuit, it was just because obviously it was much wider at the rear and obviously very narrow at the front, but the performance was kind of staggering because you go through a high-speed corner, it's got no wings on it, and the thing was just kind of, I don't know, kind of you sort of hanging back because you're expecting this thing to sort of go off the road, and it would just like whistle through the corners, and it kind of defied logic really. But I mean, I have to say it was definitely an impressive piece of engineering because for what it could do for, you know, because it was so different. I mean, it worked. I mean, what was it like to drive?
Pretty terrible, to be honest with you. No, it wasn't. It was just different, and there was no being serious for a second. I mean, in terms of the driving, normally you obviously go into a corner, you brake, and whatever racing car you're in, whether you're a GT car or you're a prototype, whatever, you get an element of weight transfer. So you hit the brakes and all the weight goes to the front, and it's all on the nose. The way that car worked is essentially you never got any sensation of that whatsoever. It just kind of squatted, and therefore there was, and the majority of the braking was done on the rear rather than the front. A, because of contact patch and of the tyre, and B, because of the size of the brakes. And it was an open rear diff as well. So it was so different to drive as a car than anything else. And for a large period of time that I was with Delta Wing, I was driving for Bentley as well. So I was going from light prototype car back to a heavy GT3 car. And that transition was quite difficult sometimes. But yeah, it was an amazingly interesting project to be involved with. I've got a lot of fond memories of some of the people that were involved with. I mean, Dave Price, I've driven for various different stages of my career, and I'd drive for Pricey at a drop of a hat anywhere. You know, I think he's the best team boss you can have. Don Panos, you know, what a guy, like so interesting, the most interesting brain. And I'm not just talking about motorsport, I'm talking about any human being I have met by a million miles. Nothing comes close to Don Panos. Yeah. Just the most amazing human being you've ever met. And you completely understand why he was so successful when you spend more than 5 minutes with him. You think, wow, okay, he's off the spectrum. Like he's just completely different, but looks at something. And the Delta Wing epitomised Don. He had to do something different. And
what was the point in it, though? What was the point in the... Because Nissan never brought a car out that looked like that. It wasn't like they were gunning for race cars.
Originally, it was all about efficiency, wasn't it? It was to say that you could do it in half the fuel and, you know, half the tyres and all that sort of stuff, which was kind of a little bit nonsense when Panos took it over, because the engine just got to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which meant that we were quicker in a straight line. And ultimately, it was very, very quick on certain tracks, and it was very good at the fast-flowing circuits, you know, Road America, Daytona, Mosport, those sort of circuits. Great. Take it to downtown, you know, Long Beach and Los Angeles. Horrendous. I think I qualified 4th there, and I think that's probably the best qualifying lap I've ever done in my career. It was just horrendous. It was bouncing off everywhere you could. It was just, it was very circuit dependent, but actually it was, it was a mega program to be involved with, because you got to remember, you had no restrictions to what you could do to it. It didn't work to a rule book. So if you wanted if you wanted another element to the car, the restriction was almost the engineer's mindsets. And we had some really good, you know, engineers there. Muggo was one of the race engineers who, again, I've driven for at quite a few stages in my career and really enjoyed it. So, but yeah, looks wise, definitely divided opinion. I think the best thing about driving it was for the hour that you were behind the wheel, you didn't have to look at it. And it was, I wouldn't say it was the prettiest racing car, but interestingly enough as well, it was actually probably the most physical racing car I've ever driven, despite the car was really, really light, had the heaviest steering that I've ever come across in any racing car. And I remember Alexander Rossi joined us for Daytona one year, I think, and maybe Rossi was doing IndyCar, but he'd just come out of GP2, which have got notoriously heavy steering. And Rossi was like, man, like, I can't drive this. He was a fit guy, really, really used to the GP2 heavy steering loads. And he said, there's no way. He was really panicking, going, I'm not going to be able to do a double stint. I'm not going to be able to race. And I said, don't worry, mate, it'll break down for an hour, so you won't have to do it. So it was fine. But it was cool. I enjoyed it and proud of it, to be a part of it.
I always thought it was really weird, those little front tyres. You know, they bring them to the grid and they're like little, like literally like bike tyres, weren't they? They were so small.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, when you see the car going around the track and you've got on these little tyres, you think it just doesn't compute. But yeah, it was.
Was it one of those cars, Guy, where you walk past to your sort of very conventional looking racing car and you all stop and have a little bit of a gander at with a bit of bodywork off, have a look at how it works?
It was pretty fascinating because compared to everything on the grid, it was so different. So you're just naturally curious. And like Andy said, it actually got to be a real pain in the ass to race because it was so straight. You know, so you know, had no drag and it was a bit of a rocket. And then in the corners, you'd be quicker. So and then it would leave you in the corners again. So actually, it could be a real pain.
As a race car, it was better than the qualifier because on an open, clear track, other cars would carry the rolling speed in the corner and make use of their downforce. In a race, because essentially, you know, it's only qualifying, the Delta Wing couldn't do that. But in a racing situation, we could always get past somebody on a straight where you couldn't. So I could use traffic to my advantage. Yeah. And that was one of its biggest advantages. But yeah, definitely divided opinion. It was kind of like having like an ugly girlfriend in that you and your mates would always rip you and say, she's not quite that great, is she? And you'd try and look at her and think, no, she's fine, she's okay. I'm, you know, and you try and tell all your mates that, you know, she's good looking. You just got to get the lighting right, or you know, she's a real goer or something like that. But deep down, you know, she's not quite great. And that was what the feeling was when you were driving it.
But you did quite a few years with the Delta Wing, didn't you? Probably what, 3-4 years were you involved?
Do you know what? I can't remember. Yeah, 4 or 5 years, something like that, I reckon. Yeah. And initially doing the whole season, but then obviously the Bentley program was getting through, I don't know what, 13, 14 and 15, those sort of times, the Bentley program got more and more, intense. So I think that's when I went down to just doing 4 or 5, the long races. I wanted to stay involved with the program, and Don allowed me to just do the long races rather than the full season because it was quite intense. Well, there was clashes as well, so it was quite hard to do both.
Yeah. You were racing one of our obviously great British lady drivers as well, which must have been fun. Catherine with the project.
Yes, yeah. Who we saw last weekend at Paul Ricard, and unfortunately she had a really nasty accident at Paul Ricard at Sing Corner, but hopefully, well, she's
okay. I think, isn't she, on the latest reports?
Yeah, wrist, Freya's, I think it was sprained wrist, a broken ankle and one leg and the other leg. So hopefully she'll be back fairly soon.
Just every now and again we get a bit of a reminder of just how dangerous it is. We sort of get into a false sense of security, especially as enthusiasts watching you guys out there on the track. And every now and again it's just that little bit of a reminder, isn't it?
Yeah. Especially at Ricard, because it's notoriously safe. But honestly, the LMP2 cars now are so quick, and that's just about flat out that corner. But yeah, when something goes wrong, I think she just got on the curb and it bottomed out. She managed to find
into the wall on the inside. It's quick, but she's good. Yeah. She's good. Yeah, she's a brilliant driver. I mean, I know she was. You know, you said she was really quick, and the stuff she's done since then in GT3 and stuff in America, she's been really quick. I mean, she had some big shunts because she had that big IndyCar shunt, didn't she? In
Road America.
Yeah.
She did. But no, she's incredibly brave as a driver, and a tough competitor both on and off the track. So hopefully I'm sure she will be back fairly quickly.
And tell us about what it was like to become a Bentley boy.
Yeah. So I mean, becoming the Bentley boy was good. Knowing that I was going to be another few years back with you was I don't know. No,
as massage tables beckoned.
Yeah, exactly. I think I got you back in Abu Dhabi for that with the drinks bottle. I don't know if you know about that.
I think it's the old drinks tube when you got the old drinks tube in your mouth and you tell you where it's been.
I'd usually wait until he was strapped in the car.
Just as you sat in the car, fully dehydrated, having the biggest suck on the drinks bottle, and then you see a picture of it up his bum. When he shows you a picture of it on his phone, it's not quite as refreshing.
It's just a sports drink. Everybody needs a little bit of flavour in their life. Come on. So yeah, no, we I mean, that was a brilliant, I mean, I think the three of us was the perfect combination of drivers who all gave a different bit to the driving element, but also the team element as well. Obviously, starting a very, very new project with, you know, Bentley back into motorsport, but with a new technical partner in M Sport who you know, massively experienced in rallying, but at the time had very little knowledge of GT3 racing. I think even Malcolm admitted that when he got the call to go GT3 racing, he didn't know what GT3 racing was. But you know, they certainly learned very, very quickly and did an amazing job. And yeah, but as a driver trio, myself, you know, Kaney and Guy, we knew each other really well. I mean, I'd worked with Kaney before. In fact, Kaney actually coached me when I was in Formula Renault.
Stephen Kane, for anyone who's wondering who Kane is.
So Stephen was out of the Nissan program. You know, he was you know, he brought certain elements to it, and obviously Guy and I had driven at Dyson together as well. So we all knew one another really well, and I think we had a very good relationship in it. There was complete transparency and complete trust across the three drivers, and that really brings a huge strength to the team, that you're all pulling in the same direction, which you would be surprised doesn't happen as often as you might think it should, or should happen, really, I suppose.
We heard this from Brian Gush as well, that the way that program worked was in many ways better than the Speed 8 program, because there was less politics within the actual team.
You can't manufacture it. I mean, it's a bit, I sort of liken it always to a football team, in the respect that, you know, you can have the best players that, you know, available, they put them in a team, and if they don't play well together, then they're going to be less effective. And you know, it's like you look back when Leicester won the championship. Perhaps not the best players, but the best players playing together and bringing out the best in each other. And I think like that's where we were strong, is we kind of, if one of us had a weak point, the others would cover it, and vice versa. And you're always kind of working as a team. And I think Brian looked at it and said, I want to try and replicate that, but it's not easy to do. And when you're choosing your drivers, they might know each other quite well, but it doesn't mean they're going to work together well. It's very, very hard. It's just that chemistry. And luckily we had that chemistry, and we stayed a very tight unit. So whether it be, you know, the drivers' meetings or wherever we were always together. And we had this sort of strong bond. And I think the competitors would look at that and realize that there was no chinks in our armor. I think it was, we had good years. I mean, we scored Bentley's first ever win with the Continental GT at Silverstone, which was great to do at the BRDC, in front of the BRDC.
You shared a photo of that, actually, and I know, Andy, you weren't very happy at the particular angle that we picked on that particular photo, but it was a great photo.
That was Rickard. That was Rickard.
Oh, was that Rickard?
Yeah. Well, I was definitely breathing out. I think it may be a few too many croissants and baguettes that week.
But that was another great story. You know, watching that unfold, like the Speed 8 program, to see Bentley back. And I don't think, before I listened to the Brian Gush story of how you guys did that, I wasn't quite aware of how big a leap that was. Once again, starting from scratch, kind of, you assume, well, Bentley have already done it once. They've done it with the LMP program. They'll blitz it in the GT3. But listening to Brian and now you guys, that was obviously such a big leap into the unknown, really.
I mean, that was the Le Mans program was obviously a long time ago. You know, all different personnel, and GT3 racing is, you know, it's super competitive. And I think to take a car like the Continental GT and make it into a race car, and then go out against people like Audi and McLaren, and try and compete with them and beat them, it's a big ask. But it was great that we were able to do that, wasn't it? I mean, it was good fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we were able, we almost had a blank sheet of paper, especially with the technical partner in M Sport, because, you know, you could sit here and say, well, their lack of motorsport knowledge in terms of circuit racing knowledge could be seen as a negative, but it also meant that they didn't go into it with any preconceived ideas or perceptions or limitations. And you know, you look back, and I listened to the podcast you did with Gushy a few weeks ago, and you know, we talk about Stephen's crash at Monza in that first round in qualifying, and every other team I know would have packed up and just gone home. You know, that they knew a guy in Milan who was friends with Valentino Rossi because they run him at the rally there, that they could go to his body shops. They took it off on a flatbed, and it comes back the next morning. And it was amazing. And I think we had a real role, and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't even, as guys say, it wasn't forced. It just naturally happened that way, that the whole team built around us, and we had a real role of success. And it's the point that you just expected, and this is when it's actually amazing when you consider and you look back, when you consider how tough that championship is. You know, I know it's called GT World Challenge, whatever it is now, but it's Blancpain, and you go back and look at Blancpain, and you think I would expect every single race, and I think all three of us would, to turn up and at least get a podium. And if you hadn't got a podium, it was a poor weekend, and that's actually incredible when you consider the level and depth of quality within that grid. And I remember actually the start of 2014, we had the first race was Monza. We finished second or third, can't remember. And this is how much I was just used to the idea that we were winning, was that we finished the race, and I turned to Matt Wilson and say we'd finished second, say we'd finished third, whatever. And I said, "Oh, who's coming up to the podium now?" And he was like, "We've only finished second, what are you on about?" And it was like almost you were in that role where it was just kind of like a routine. We'd get results. I was used to going to the podium. I was used to winning races. And you had that confidence, which is such a huge part of it in the sport, any sport, to be honest, but especially motorsport. And they were good years as well, for sure.
Tell us about that Silverstone win then, because as Guy says, right in front of the BRDC, which I know is particularly special to you, Andy. But you know, home track, British car, again, the fairy tale.
It was, to be honest with you, my back has not really recovered from carrying Smithy through that race and the mistake that he made. I mean, you know, let's be honest. It's I think I did about 3 discs in that race. It's got to be a highlight of your career, and we, you know, it was just everything came together. The car, the team, we had a sweet spot. We'd come from Monza. I think we'd only finished like 7th or something in Monza in the first race.
And the pit stops were pretty poor because we were first rounds. So we went.
We had a really rough race, hadn't we? I did the first stint at Monza with that Ferrari, and it was like door banging all the way through the stint. And then, so I came in like 3rd or 4th or something. Then we just had 2 horrendous pit stops. I remember coming back after Monza, and we looked at the pit times, and we were like, wow, if we'd sorted the pit stops out there, we'd have been like really, really close to a win. If not, we'd have won. And it was kind of like, wow. And the car, because I felt like the car didn't feel good or anything like that. And then we got to Silverstone, and the car just felt incredible. And yeah, I mean,
Who worked with the team on the pit stops then? Did you guys work on that?
Yes. We all got in our cars, we took our bikes, went up to Cockermouth, and we spent 3 or 4 days there. We trained together. We were with the mechanics. We got a dummy car, and we practiced pit stops. We even did some pit stops ourselves, doing some changing. And actually, we know, and they could see at this point that we were hungry and wanted to be successful, and we were prepared to do whatever it took. And they all, to be fair to them, they all stepped up. And when we arrived at Silverstone, you know, they really kind of, you know, they maybe still weren't the fastest at that point, but it was enough that we had, you know, we were quick enough on track that, you know, and the pit stops were good enough that we were in with a shout. And then of course, you know, the following race was Paul Ricard, and we won again. And we're like, wow, this is like, you know, this is amazing. You know, we're on the roll.
Were they rally mechanics, Guy, or were they brought in specially for that program?
They were pretty much rally mechanics, to be honest. I mean, our engineer was a rally engineer, never engineered a race car before. Mechanics would, the odd one might have done a bit of, you know, racing, you know, a lower level maybe. But primarily they're all.
But it was a true M Sport team that they compiled. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was cool that, you know, it was a completely different, you know, point of view, the way of looking at it. But even the changes that we made on the car. I mean, I remember when we first started testing, you know, we'd say, well, can we do a ride height change of maybe, I don't know, maybe a mil? And they sort of like laugh and say, well, you'll never feel a mil. They're used to making like 20 mil changes in a rally car. And of course, they don't look at data and analyze data in the same way that you do in racing, because in racing, you're looking for fractions of a tenth here and there. Whereas in rallying, you know, it's much sort of less intense. So I think they were kind of very open to learning, to be fair, and we were able to guide them. And I think, you know, it was a real sort of team effort.
I think you know, as well. I think that after Monza and going into Silverstone, that showed the real strength of the individuals and skill sets as drivers, in terms of, it wasn't just, you know, that's why we were there. It wasn't just the experience or the speed of driving that, you know, that we were there to help and lead and develop the team. And I think, you know, Guy was very influential coming out off Monza to really organise and get and mould and get everyone together. So we went up to, as he says, we went up to M Sport and yeah, as he said, you know, went training, went cycling, training with the guys, doing spin classes with the team during the week.
Where the team trainer put you on your ass, Guy? Barry, yes.
Barry's great, because I don't know how old Barry is. He must be in his mid-70s. I think we talked about it with Elfin Evans. Yeah. We had Elfin obviously on earlier podcast, and you know, the guy's just a machine. And it was, you know, it's pretty brutal, to be fair. You know, and the training, I mean, I was okay with the training, but because Andy had come from football background, so he was pretty, you know, he had this kind of like built-in kind of fitness, and you know, Katie was pretty fit as well. So there was always this competition, you know, everybody, you know, but we'd push each other. And then whenever we do a training camp with our sister car there, we'd always have to make sure that all three of us beat all three of them in every, whether it be on the bike, whether it be playing football, whether it be in the gym. So we had this competition and we pushed each other. So we were always first, second, and third. You know, never third, fourth, and fifth. So, you know, sixth. So we had this competition all the way through, which was great. You know, and that's what you want from your teammates. And you know, we'd bring each other every day, and we'd sort of, you know, if you've been training, what's been going on, and it's that kind of, you almost have that kind of, you don't want to let them down. So you have that. Yeah. Every time you get in the car, it's like, I'm not going to let them down. I'm going to perform to the best that I can do, and we expected of each other to perform, and when you've got that in a positive way, not in a negative way, not like, oh, you know, oh, he's had a bad stint, you know, like, doesn't that make me look good? It wasn't that at all. It was like, you know, you're trying to help and support each other. So, you know, and you look back at that, and it's good times. It's enjoyable, because when you're performing well and you've got that kind of that drive, it's great. And I think when you're in a team sport, you know, you need to be driven, but you need to also be pushed by the people around you.
And also, it was Matt Wilson's first foray, wasn't it? I remember speaking to him at the Autosport show, and you as well, Guy, when the car was there for its launch. And Matt had obviously gone from being WRC driver to being more involved in the business. And then he was kind of, it looked like from the outside at least, he was handed this Bentley GT3 program, and he was cutting his teeth almost, wasn't it, on the team management side of things for you guys?
Yeah, it was a lot learning curve for the whole team, really. You know, Matt was learning. I mean, everybody was learning, but everybody was like a sponge. So, you know, and they learned fast. And, you know, Malcolm was going from, you know, Malcolm's credit, I don't think he missed a race. You know, quite often he was doing rallies on the Saturday, and then he'd be at the racetrack on the Sunday. And he was always there and wanting to learn. And it was great to see Malcolm, because you really get to see the competitor in him. You know, you know, when you're actually racing, he's so into it. Even though he didn't really understand it, I think he actually really grew to love it. It'd be interesting, you know, I'm sure we'll speak to him at some point in the podcast, but from a rally guy going racing, I think once he realised, you know, just how tough it was, and the competition and everything else, and the fact that he's got his team there competing, the competitor in him, you can see that he really wanted to win and do well. So it was good to see. But, you know, like anything, it gets more and more competitive, and pressure, and BOP becomes a big thing in GT racing, where, you know, if someone has a bit of success, they pull you back, and it starts to become more and more political, unfortunately, and then the results don't quite come because the car's been pulled back, and it gets tricky. So, but that's, you know, that's racing, isn't it? And it's enjoying, when you're successful, enjoying those times and appreciating those times.
There's quite a few themes across this podcast that have come up today that are kind of pulling quite a few of the things that we've talked about, Guy. But one of the things that we haven't touched on yet, and we almost went there at the very beginning, Andy, is your directorship of the BRDC Superstars, because young drivers and developing young drivers, and that kind of passion to if you like, kind of protect and build the future of the sport is something that has come up with quite a few of the people we've interviewed. But I think you're one of the, in fact, the most active in that area with what you're doing with the young drivers, people like Seb Morris, Ash Sutton, drivers that we recognise now that have gone on to success, that have been through that program. So let's head there. I know we've skipped a bit of the racing career, but I'm fascinated by this young driver thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm incredibly lucky. I mean, I've been incredibly lucky in my own career from a driving point of view. That, you know, when I was younger, I was on the MSA, when it was called MSA Team UK at the time. Well, it started off as being British Race Elite and then turned into Team UK, and it's now known as Motorsport Team UK. So I'm a performance manager for them. So I've gone from being on the program to now heading up Motorsport UK, and same with the BRDC Superstars. Again, I was on BRDC Superstars, I think 2008, 2009, around that sort of time, and then graduated from the program. And then last year, I was asked, when Tim Harvey stood down, the BRDC asked me to be director of the young driver program for them. So it's yeah, I love it. I mean, it's, to be honest with you, I'm not just in the BRDC or Motorsport UK. I've had some fantastic people help me through my career, teammates, as we've discussed, and in all seriousness, you know, people like Guy, people like Olivier Panis, that have really, really helped me through my career. But there's also been a lot of people off track. You know, David Brabham, who was working for Motorsport UK, or MSA at the time. You know, that led me to Dave Price. This has really helped me in my career get to where I wanted to get. And I suppose I have a real passion for learning myself, and I think you do that from a lot of the time from being in a very strong team environment and learning from one another. And I think the role that I've got with both Motorsport UK and the BRDC, it gives me an opportunity, yes, to give back to the sport, but also to work with these exceptionally talented drivers, where what's really interesting now is they've all got so many resources, they've got so many coaches, they've all actually, the level has jumped up so far from when I was younger. And now you really, to contribute and to help them and to develop them, you really have to challenge yourself, and you have to think in new ways. And I love that aspect of the sport. I love seeing, you know, I think as a coach, your ultimate goal should be to make yourself and your role redundant, because you should get to a point where you've given so much knowledge and expertise and tools, essentially, to the athlete, that actually they don't need you anymore. That never really happens, because what ends up happening is the boundaries just keep changing, the development keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you start learning new areas. And yeah, to work with, you know, we've got some amazing drivers. You know, obviously Lando Norris and George Russell all went through the BRDC Superstars, and you know, we've got the likes of Callum Ilott, who's doing fantastically at GP2
in
now.
essence, what is it? Is it a mentoring program? Is it an access to various resources type of fair? Is it a networking opportunity? What? Give us a flavour for people who don't know what it is, who have got probably no hope of going to it. What is it?
All of what you've just mentioned. I mean, what it is from the BRDC's point of view is we try to limit it to 12. This year we've actually got 13, because there is so many talented young British drivers. So it's for the top, but generally it's for the top 12 British drivers that can be from all disciplines of circuit racing. So it can be touring cars, GTs, single seaters, and so we say prototypes. And you are there to help them along their path of becoming a professional racing driver. Some of which have already become professionals, who are on their Charlie Eastwood, Ash Sutton, Seb. They're all on Superstars at the moment, and they're obviously in a professional capacity. And the way I like to run the program is that all of the guys are good. In fact, I'm doing them a disservice. They're all exceptional, hence why they're there. So they are already talented. It's our job as a collective to make them better. That doesn't necessarily make them faster. I mean, make them better and make them more professional. And every driver needs different stuff. So I don't make it a sort of one size fits all program in terms of, oh, well, let's have a seminar and go and learn about tires, or let's have a seminar and go and learn about gearboxes or sponsorship, because quite frankly, you can kind of go and do that yourself, and only probably 20% of the room really need it. And of that 20%, only probably 50% of will actually really digest it because of the environment that it's being taught in. So what I try to do is that make it, over a period of when they're on the program, which is generally a minimum stay of a year or two, we mentor them, we analyze how they're performing, and we offer areas for their self-development that is bespoke to them. So what one driver might need, obviously I've got to be a little bit careful in terms of from a confidentiality point of view, what we do with each individual driver, because that's one of the things in our sport. And I think, again, that's a big element of the program, also the big element that the program offers is, you've got to remember, a lot of these drivers are also on young driver programs from the likes of Ferrari Young Driver Development, Williams. If it's not Formula One, they could be on the Renault Driver Development, but they could be in GTs, they could be with Aston Martin, they could be Bentley, they could be. So they don't want to go to those employers or those young driver programs and admit, look, I'm not very good at this. I feel I need to improve this element of my, should we say, my driving or my professional skill set. Is probably a better way to look at it, because it's not just limited to how you drive. And that's actually a cultural problem that we have in the sport, is that, and I know this from looking at lots of other sports and working in other sports. I actually did a university degree. After my first degree, I did a second degree in sports elite coaching, and I got to work with coaches from different sports. So you look at the Olympic fencing team, you look at the Olympic squash team, and the levels that these people are going to find an edge, it leaves our sports decades behind. And one issue we do have in the sport is that we don't have the confidence to stand up and say, I'm not very good at this, I need to get better. Because you're so dependent to get your results and the momentum in your career to continue up the ladder. But really, if you're going to actually develop, development is separate to results. And sometimes I think that's probably one of the biggest elements that we can bring from the program, is that we give independent advice. I'm not there to judge the superstars. I'm not going to employ them. I'm not ultimately going to give them a job within my team, because I don't have one. So I can help them independently to make sure. And also, I've got no other motivations to dare I say it, there's a few people in motorsport who might want to help people for their own benefit rather than the athlete themselves. And I think there's a huge element there with the BRDC, where we can offer independent advice, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to have all these answers. I don't for a second say that I do. But there's a huge wealth of knowledge within the club at the BRDC, where for example, if I don't know it, I could call upon the likes of a Guy Smith, a Derek Warwick, a Dario Franchitti, a David Coulthard, to say, what could we do here? How could you help this driver? And that's a really unique situation that we have to call upon, that not many other people do. So. Yeah,
it's one of the problems with our sport and the way we're backwards compared to some other sports. Is it because of a bit of a misconception that money talks, and it's about how much backing and funding and money you've got more than anything else, compared to something like football or tennis or golf or something? Is there an element of that, and that's why a lot of people have that misconception?
Yeah, I think possibly. I think
you don't have to worry about these young kids because it's okay, because his dad's got a lot of money or he's got a big company behind him, so we don't have to worry about him. He'll be fine. Is that kind of?
Yeah, and also people are probably looking to say, oh, well, there's an opportunity here to commercially make things work, rather than actually look at how, we can get 10 test days out of this kid, rather than, well, actually, but what are you going to learn when you do that?
We had that from Andy Trio, actually, didn't we, Guy? There was a lot of that going on in the lower, when he's going through with Seb, and said he'd never do that again, didn't it?
Yeah, because everyone's got slightly different motives at the end of the day. And you can't rush the process. You got to, the kids have got to learn. And the problem is now, as well as probably Andy's seen it with the superstars, is that the kids are getting younger and younger. And, back in my day and before then, you weren't getting into Formula One until you're in your late 20s, early 30s. Now, if you're not in Formula One by your 18 or 19, you kind of starting to get old, which is crazy, really. So the pressure is you're expected to be the finished article or close to it by your late teens or whatever. And everybody at that age is developing at different points. And as Andy said, every individual is different. We know that everybody's different and everybody's got different strengths and weaknesses. So it's good to hear that they don't pigeonhole drivers and say, well, this is what you should do. It's a case of some drivers need to kick up the bum and be motivated. Some are completely self-motivated, and some need an arm around them. Everybody's different, and it's good to know that they kind of don't pigeonhole that and just try and be focused on what how they can improve. So it's really good. It's really good.
Talking of putting arms around people, I've got a photo literally just now. I'm looking at my phone, being a bit rude, but I got a tweet come through from Jonathan Tuckwell, who's a massive Bentley Motorsport fan. You guys must have seen him on Twitter, and he's asked us some great questions over the series. The picture of him with his arms around both of you, with the number 7 Bentley behind. That he was gutted when they broke that Kane Smith Meyrick Bentley. But I think he means, did he break it up? As in, does he mean the team? Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
It's great how some of the fans have got behind this though and asked some great questions. We've got a couple actually on this one, if we can put them to you, Andy.
No problem.
Jonathan Tuckwell, in fact, has asked, do you class your work as director of BRDC Superstars just as important as winning a race? How satisfying is it for you when the young stars that you've had a hand in their career come through and have their own success? For example, Seb Morris.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the success when I see the young drivers that we work with, and not for a second do I believe it's a solo effort from my point of view. There's a huge element there's a huge team of resources that I can call upon to help these young drivers. But yeah, when I see them get success, absolutely, it gives me immense pleasure and pride for. Not just individually, I said genuinely for all of the people involved, that I know that the hard work goes in behind the scenes. So there's nothing quite like standing on the podium yourself and spraying the champagne, but a very, very close second would.
Have you ever had a text from one of them to say, that thing that we worked on, it's worked, it's really helped me? Anything like that?
Really, really often, and I think again that at the end of a race weekend or at the end of a season, or when somebody really takes the time to say, look, we and they're our best adverts, that for the program. If the drivers are buying into what the process of what we're doing, if the drivers are really involved and immersed in it, then that's what I think gives the program so much credibility. I take a huge amount of pride from it.
Brilliant. Spence Burks wants to know, what is your most memorable race and why? I added the and why on, but we get some colour in there.
Oh, wow. I suppose when they say memorable, it's got to be it could be good or bad. But
it could be good or bad, yeah.
Let's go with a good.
Let's have a good and a bad. Let's stretch it.
What about firing Johnny Molam into the pit wall at Laguna?
I didn't fire him into he saved me. From that was an infamous one. That was memorable that weekend for other reasons. But you should get Justin Bell on and he'll tell you.
I was going to say, I'm going to stop saying tell us more about that, because it's ended badly every time so far.
No, that was fun. But
this is more dangerous than the Jason Plato one, guy.
I know, it is, essentially, yeah.
Plato, you're second now.
You've gone very red. So I would say most memorable. Yes, you can't. I can't beat Le Mans 2010. Yeah, I can't. As an event and as a race, I just can't beat it. I was in a very good place from my own performance, but also the people that I got to work with and I got to learn from. Yeah, that was a happy memory for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. What a race.
And what from a bad memorable then?
Bad memorable.
2018 with the GT3 car, perhaps. That was a big one, wasn't it?
The Spa crash.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was one that I won't be looking to repeat in terms of what happened with nothing I could do, obviously, about it. But I think if I repeated it, I think my body would just instantly give up. So
there is now an Andy Meyrick suite at the Liège hospital, because I've been there like twice now, pretty much with him. Because a couple of years before that, he also ended up in Liège hospital at Spa 24 Hours. So
it's fantastic service, to be honest with you.
Enjoy the food.
Cracking breakfast.
So you went back for a second go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that Spa crash was. I can't even begin to describe what I put my body through with that. And obviously not intentionally.
Did you break anything, Andy, or was it just bruising?
Just not right. No, I broke. Yeah, so I broke 2 vertebrae, 9 ribs, and collapsed lung. Fairly, all of which was just from the rate of deceleration. Nothing hit me in terms of inside the car. It was all from just stopping so quickly. It was 151 mile an hour impact into a car that had come back across the track, and I obviously didn't see. The
picture was horrendous of the car when you actually saw the car. It's just, you look like there's no one could survive that. But I think
apart from me, obviously. I was just very, very lucky, and thankfully, both of us walked away. Obviously, the car he'd had his own accident and had sort of speared back across the track. And as you know, you come over the top of Radion and it's completely blind. And obviously at night, you just had nowhere to go. So thankfully, I was getting married 2 weeks later as well, so I had to get there fairly quickly, to be honest with you.
You must have still been pretty sore though, were you?
Yeah, I was on morphine actually still on my wedding day, which I keep telling my wife all the time makes the marriage null and void anyway. So I can deny.
Well, it beats a nervous pint. Your dad passes you before you walk up the aisle, doesn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. No, I was absolutely off the head, mate. It was brilliant. No, it was that was odd circumstances, but definitely one that I wouldn't. But again, you learn from these things, and again, it was a setback, but it was an opportunity to improve myself. I don't want to repeat it, but it's part of the journey, and I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, good answers and good questions. Thanks for your questions, chaps. We do appreciate them.
Well, should we go into some quick fire ones?
Yeah, it's guys' questions times. He's got a smile on his face, like he's added. I'm just going to have a quick chat. Are you adding something in there, Guy?
They're all. I'm going to ask him obviously the Max Papis one, which is a different, interesting question, but I'd be interested to see what the answer is. So just got to answer the quick, whatever comes into your mind. So Top Gear or Fifth Gear?
Top Gear.
Le Mans or Spa 24 Hours?
Le Mans.
Beach holiday or adventure holiday? You've had many.
Yeah, well, I just limit it to one. Beach.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Oversteer or understeer?
Oversteer. 100%.
Bentley or Delta Wing?
Bentley. Just.
V6 or V8?
V8.
V8. Okay, so I've got a passed on question from Max, and I'm trying to sort of figure it out. He said,
it's kind of phrased a little differently here. It was more, I think it was what would you give up 10 Christmases? Would you give up 10 Christmases for a test in your ultimate car? It doesn't have to be an F1 car.
Would you have been willing to give up 10 Christmases for a test in? I put in the best Formula 1 car or in your ultimate car.
But it depends what you mean by Christmas, because if you mean like
Christmas Day,
Christmas, I don't
Let's
know.
dissect the question.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. No one, but when you get older, and like no one buys you presents at Christmas anyway. And to be honest with you, we've obviously just had our first child, so I'm aware that now Christmas is going forward is just going to cost me an absolute fortune. So yeah,
you give it up then.
Yeah, no, definitely. If I could drive.
Okay, I'll rephrase the question. Would you be willing to give up 10 Christmases to be my teammate again?
No, not a chance. No way.
Come on.
I couldn't do it. I've seen what you did last weekend at Brands Hatch, mate. I think you need to hang up. But come on.
That's how it makes your spa shot look like a baby's crash. Check it out. You can check it out on YouTube.
It's when that rector bell slaps onto the roof like a mattress.
Yeah, it's a big crash on YouTube.
Yeah, but you think, by the way, when you watch it, you hear that noise as it's going into the wall. You think that's the engine and the throttle sticking. It's not. It's Smithy whining. To be honest with you, which is all I heard for about the 5 seasons we've driven together. Is this high-pitched, monotonous? You think, oh, shut up, would you? So yeah,
I didn't actually know it crashed, and I got a picture of Guy sent to me by someone who was at Brands Hatch, someone I work with, and he looked pretty dejected in the picture, and the guy was very tight-lipped on message about what had happened, so it'd be a bad race. Yeah. And I put this picture out with a caption to say, character-building race, little did I know. And Guy sat there like that against the camper, having had a...
Yeah, I was in a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of pain.
I can tell now when I look at the picture. I didn't realise at the time. I feel terrible.
It must have been bad, because I don't know if people can see this, but is that a neck brace you've got on there or something like that to support you?
The Russian neck brace.
that is a proper Guy Smith, fluffy neck brace that he's got.
What a stud, eh? What a stud. Right, come on then, Mr. Meyrick. Have you got a question for whoever it might be? Because we're still not 100% certain who the next guest is, but we've got.
We wouldn't tell you even if we were.
Ah, right. That's I really want to go with like something similar to Jason, but I'm going to be sensible. I'm going to say if you could race any any car from any period of time on any track, what would it be?
Okay, good one. Good question.
What would yours be?
Speed 8. Yeah, I hate to admit it.
You've had a go in it, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, it was sadly mine. It was not a
difficult to drive. He said they were legends that drove that. Not anybody could drive that. He said.
To be honest,
big balls and big guns.
Exactly. Well, they still had Smithy's seat in there, so I was rolling around with his fat ass with his imprint in there. So it was quite uncomfortable, to be honest with you. I have to say that Speed 8 was that's the ultimate car you could race at Le Mans. So it pains me to say.
People listening that would say that from a fan perspective as well. Yeah. Guy, what would yours be? Any car from any era, any track?
Oh, do you know what? I knew you were going to throw that to me. I would quite like. I was really lucky to obviously drive that Williams F1 car, which was really like golden era, and that car was, that car was amazing. So I kind of feel like I've almost driven it, but I guess some of the sort of the Group C cars, like the Porsches, that would be cool, because they're such a classic. From as a sports car driver. You look back at the different eras and the Group C stuff, like what Derek was driving. The
Sauber. Sauber's a cool car.
Yeah, the Sauber. Yeah, because everyone says it's a Porsche, but the Sauber would be a really cool one, actually.
Yeah.
Kind of gets forgotten about, doesn't it?
Yeah, mega car.
So many cool cars. Yeah.
Well, there we go. So many cool cars, so many cool stories as well. If you've been watching this on YouTube, make sure you check out all the other podcasts on iTunes or Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. If you're listening to it, then I can't promise that you'll see Guy Smith's balls, but you'll certainly see his expression when Andy went there. Another interesting Spinning Wheels episode. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Pleasure. Thank you.